Welcome everyone. This is Mary Vandenplas, Director of Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today our two senior quantitative recruiters, Linda Burtch and Sandy Marmitt, will be sharing data on women in data science and analytics. And now a quick introduction of today's speakers. Linda Burtch is an industry leader in the analytics and data science recruiting space and has dedicated her career to becoming a subject matter expert on quantitative hiring market trends. Sandy Marmitt has over 10 years of experience recruiting analytics professionals and specializes in mid-career data science and analytics roles. Both Linda and Sandy have been actively involved in the analytics community, participating in groups like the American Statistical Association and Informs for years. And you may also have read some of their excellent insights on the Burtch Works blog. For those of you who aren't familiar with Burtch Works, we are an executive recruiting firm specializing in quantitative fields like analytics, data science, and marketing research. We're the leading resource for insights about the hiring market, including our comprehensive salary reports. Our data and insights have been repeatedly mentioned in the press. And this year, Burtch Works was once again recognized by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms. And now over to you, Linda and Sandy.
Thanks for that nice introduction, Mary. That was great. Also, before we begin, I want to just take a minute to thank Mary Vandenplas, who is our Director of Operations, as well as our social media director, Stacy Basowski, for all the hard work that they put in to bring all the data and insights together to make this webinar happen, as well as the rest of our content. I mean, they put in countless hours to support the recruiting team and also provide information to our audience, and they're always sort of working hard behind the scenes, and I wanted to give them a little bit of credit today. So thank you. So today we're going to focus on women in analytics, something near and dear to my heart, and we have thousands of data points. We've gleaned tons of insights over the years. And we thought it might be really interesting to cut the data specifically by gender for our audience. So today, more specifically, Sandy and I are going to be talking about how many women there are in analytics. And then also we're going to compare how frequently women change jobs versus men. And then also what motivates women to change jobs. We also did a flash survey on salary negotiations, and some interesting results came out of that, and we want to present that, as well as looking at the difference between women's salaries versus men's salaries. And then the most important part, which is the question and answer period afterwards, so be sure to get your questions in. Okay, so how many women are in analytics? 26% of the predictive analytics professionals are women coming out of our predictive analytics sample this year. Now that number has remained fairly steady over the past few years. I'm really excited to say that there are more women that are in the data science and analytics field now more than ever, but there's also been an influx of men, and as a result that percent has stayed pretty much steady. Now let's break that data down by level. Most of you are probably familiar with our level breakdowns if you've followed our salary studies. So IC stands for individual contributor, and that is broken down by number of years experience. And MG stands for manager, and that's broken down by scope of responsibility. So you can see at the early career level, women make up more than a third of the population. But that number then, or that percentage decreases as the level of experience increases and goes down to 13% for the highest level managers. Now there are a number of factors that come into play, obviously. But as time goes on, I really anticipate that these numbers are going to continue to shift and evolve. Okay, so let's take a minute and look at educational backgrounds and compare by gender. Most professionals in analytics, as we all know, have an advanced degree of some sort, mathematics, statistics, economics. Now more than ever, we're seeing people that have backgrounds in physics and also in engineering. You can see on this chart that men and women are about on par in the business world with their educational level. However, women are more likely to have a master's degree, and men sort of squeak out a little bit higher on the number of PhDs. Now, we've also tracked every year what percent of analytics people change jobs. So you can see that there's very little difference, again, between the genders. So 1 in about 6 people will change jobs annually. Now, for the hiring managers out there, I think this is good information to have as you plan your staffing for the year. So every year you can anticipate some turnover. It's pretty much natural. Now, if you're a data science professional and you're likely to get bombarded with reach outs from various firms looking to recruit you, wondering if you're interested in making a change. And I'm surprised that this number isn't actually a little bit bigger than what our data shows. So it'd be interesting to know how these numbers actually compare to other kinds of jobs. And I don't have that data. Somebody brought that up. But if people do have data on that, I'd love to see it. So please share. And I think that this is an interesting slide. It shows average tenure. So men and women, again, about the same. Many of you know that the California tech community coined the phrase tour of duty and planned for and maybe even encouraged turnover in their organizations. And there's one question that I get a lot, and it's around job change frequency. How often is too often?
Ooh, that is a delicate dance. HR can sometimes be sensitive to too much job movement. They might see it as a red flag, so that's where it gets a little complicated. Also, I think the amount of tenure also, if somebody has 3 6-month stints, that is also a red flag. So like I said, it's a delicate dance.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it can also skew the other way too. So early on in your career, I think it enhances your career portfolio to switch jobs more frequently. So you're getting experience in, let's say, a new industry or a new applications area, just new opportunities to learn. And also earlier on in your career, it's easier to relocate and change jobs. You have more options. So you can optimize in your job search better at the early years. So that's where it's more important, I think, for people to expand their skill set and background. So what is too much? General rule of thumb, in the first 10 years of somebody's career, perhaps 3 job changes is about right. Maybe 4. Once you go beyond that, that's probably getting to the point where you're changing too frequently. But then you should kind of settle down after that 10-year point. At that point, you're likely to be leading a team, and you'll need to be able to demonstrate that you have had some sort of impact on the organization and on building something. And that's hard to do in just a year or 2. So I am now going to hand it over to my partner in crime here, Sandy Marmitt, and she's going to talk more about some of the findings from our flash surveys.
Well, hello everyone. Before I start, I'd like to put out a big thank you to you, Linda Burtch.
Oh,
none of us,
that's nice.
Well, none of us would be here or able to hear or enjoy all these insights without your hard work and dedication. So wanted to let you know that, and also happy 10-year anniversary.
Oh, yeah. Last week we celebrated our 10th anniversary here at Burtch Works, and we had a nice celebration. It was really fun.
Very nice.
Thanks, Sandy.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so from time to time we have flash surveys where we ask our network one specific analytics question. Now what's great about these surveys is that we already know a lot about our network, like what the people do, where they work, what level they are, salary. And so we can easily get some very good insights, and we get them quickly because it only takes seconds to respond. And Linda likes quick. Some of you may be familiar or participated in our most popular flash survey. This is the SAS versus R versus Python. And this survey has tracked tool preferences over the past few years, with Python taking the lead this year. And if those of you that want to get a little bit deeper into the details, we have a webinar that digs into this, and you can find that link on our website.
Yeah, I got to say this SAS versus R versus Python flash survey is, I look forward to it every year because the comments that we get back and the passion that people have about the tool, their tool choice, is always really interesting, and sort of it adds to the fun in our day.
Yes, a lot of fun. All right. Another interesting survey that we fielded looked at what motivates analytic professionals to change jobs. We had nearly 500 responses. We asked what top 2 factors would motivate a job change and gave a variety of options, including salary, career growth, new challenges, industry, work-life balance, benefits, and perks. So what is your guess as the top motivator? If you guessed compensation or salary, you are correct. No surprises here. Salary continues to be very important at 59%, followed by career growth at 53%. All right. So now let's look at how these motivations vary by gender. As you can see, women are far more motivated by work-life balance and remote work than men. 54% of women compared to 37% of men.
Now, this is probably not a surprise to anybody out there, and in particular to the women in the audience. You know, as life moves to new stages, priorities shift, and then they shift again. So, and I think it tends to impact women not in every case, but in many cases more than men. So these numbers did not surprise me at all.
Very true. Nicely put, Linda Burtch. Okay, the top motivating factor for men is salary at 61% as compared to women at 49%. But
you know, I've seen an interesting counterexample, and also, you know, as I work with my senior level people, oftentimes that the money factor, the salary, has less of an impact on somebody's decision making. You know, I'll give you an example, something that I'm working on right now. We've been retained by the University of Chicago, and they're looking for a director for their master's in analytics program. So and they're looking for somebody that has a strong quantitative background coming out of industry to run this program. Now, obviously, this is very, very different from most of the jobs that we work on, but really cool at the same time. So, I mean, it's not for everybody. It really is for somebody who wants to pivot and somebody who maybe has achieved a lot on the corporate side and is now willing to take a step back because, you know, I'm sure you could all guess, but the salary is not going to be the motivating factor in this job. So, and I got to tell you, I'm not having any problems at all generating people who are interested. And some of them are really talking about taking a 50% pay cut because they're that interested in having an impact on future generations of analytics professionals. So it's been really fun, really cool, and very much counter to what this data shows.
Wow, 50%. That probably depends on level. I would think that the entry market might not go for the 50%, but could depend on level. All right. So another flash survey we did earlier this year related to salary negotiation, which is always a hot topic. We specifically asked analytic professionals if they attempted to negotiate their starting salary at their current job. We had a final sample of close to 700 folks. I was also thinking about Linda and how many salaries has she helped negotiate over the years. This might be an interesting data project for somebody.
Right. Well, it's probably close to 1,000 at least. I'd
right.
say.
Well, you may have negotiated and not moved the folks, and then had a second person come in. You never. Yeah, they could have doubled at some point. You never know.
You never know.
So much data. Okay. So examining the survey results by gender, we can also find that women attempted to negotiate their salary nearly as much as men. When we looked at what women and men said they received as a result of negotiating, 73% of women received a salary increase versus 68% of men. So as we can see, men who negotiated were slightly less likely to receive a salary increase compared to women. And perhaps because of this, men were a bit higher on receiving other perks like a bonus or more vacation or maybe more food in the kitchen. Although then the women would get to share that. I have to say that here at Burtch Works we are a chocolate group, because when we get that delivery, that chocolate goes very quickly before the apples and the oranges. So, all right, so that was important information. Now back to you, Linda, on more information on compensation.
Very interesting insight, Sandy, about our kitchen. So anyway, let's talk about what everybody likes to talk about, which is compensation details. So during any presentation that I give, I can tell when people start to wake up. It's usually when I start talking about salary specifics. So let's dive into it. Now, our research has pretty consistently shown that the salary gap in analytics is pretty small. So here you can see how it varies depending on the experience level and management responsibility. So again, at the individual contributor level versus manager level. It's also, I think, important for me to point out that we're talking about base salaries here, not base plus bonus, because bonus really varies. And things like equity and RSUs and other sort of long-term incentive compensation is really hard to compare. So again, these numbers have remained pretty consistent. They're pretty close. So what's frustrating to me, though, is that there's any difference at all. So now I'm going to hand things back over to Mary for a few quick announcements before the question and answer. I hope you have all your questions ready, and I think it's the most valuable part. It's, for me and Sandy, it's the most fun part of these webinars. So, but also before I sign off, a quick thank you for attending today's webinar. We had almost 250 people signed up for it. So please stay in touch with us. Let's engage in discussion, and remember, it's a really dynamic discipline that we're in. So nothing is going to ever stay the same. So continue to learn, continue to challenge yourself. And I got to say that one common trait that I found with almost every quantitative professional that I come across is that you are all curious by nature, and that's going to serve you well professionally. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Sandy, as well. If you're interested in more of our data, you can download our full salary report, where we break down salaries by quartiles, look at salary means as well as medians, examine salaries by demographic factors like industry, gender, region, and much more. And it's free to download at burtchworks.com/study. For more hiring market insights, check out burtchworks.com/blog, where you can find our flash survey results on SAS versus R versus Python, as well as advice on resumes, interviews, evaluating job offers, and much more. And if you'd like to learn more about our research and recruiting, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And so now we have time for a couple of questions for Linda and Sandy. Please feel free to keep sending those in through the chat box on the left side of your screen. But for now, let's jump right in. So Linda and Sandy, you recommend that we negotiate our salaries, but how exactly should we go about doing that?
Oh, that's a great question because it is, like Sandy was saying, it can be a real delicate dance when you're trying to manage your career. I think it's really important, first of all, for you only to enter in negotiations if you are serious about coming to a positive conclusion. So it is. So first of all, the first thing you should say is talk about how interested you are in the role, how motivated you are, how much you like people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then talk about negotiations. And the phrase that I sort of counsel my candidates to use is, is there any wiggle room in this compensation package? So I don't know, Sandy, if you have some things to add to that.
Yeah. So what I find as well is when I am working with a candidate, somebody that is very transparent about what they need and open about what else they have going on makes the process work that much better. So also just throwing out a number for the sake of a number is difficult. So I always like to wrap a story around why are you looking for this particular number? What is your situation? What's going on with you? And so the more we can share with the client, that also helps as well.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Well, thank you for that. Next question. You've shared a lot of data today, but if you had one piece of advice for women, what would it be?
Oh, I've gotten that question before, and it really made me think for a minute. When I think back, I guess I kind of looked back at my own career and thought, well, what is it that I do that is a little bit different than what I see a lot of other women do? And I am really comfortable with delegating, and so I would have to say that the ability to delegate and feel comfortable doing that is something that I think a lot of women have a tough time with, and they shouldn't. They should get used to relying on other people to do things that maybe they don't have time to do, or they don't like to do, or they're simply not good at doing. So it takes a little while, and I'm not just talking about at work. I'm talking about in your personal life, which you probably are all already figured out. And so you really want to just clear your plate to make sure you're doing the things that are going to be high value, either at the office or also high value personally too. So because you can't do it all. Nobody can. Sandy, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. I think as women, we want to play upon our exceptional skill set as communicators. I think honest communication with your team members, your staff, communicating why things need to move forward in a business can really help get everyone on board and support you. So I think that honest communication, obviously it's good for men as well, but I think women can play upon that skill set.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I love that because one of the things that is being talked about in the data science community is the idea of having a data science translator as part of a team, and that person has to be responsible for making sure that everybody, all the stakeholders, understand the sort of the details of the analytics as they need them in order to be that evangelist to bring things into production. So it doesn't matter how elegant and wonderful and sophisticated your solutions are. If they never see the light of day, you might as well not have done them. So I think women do have a leg up, generally speaking, when it comes to being able to communicate effectively.
All right, well, great, thank you. Our next question circles back to the salary negotiation data we presented. And the number of people that don't negotiate. Why would that be? Is there any reason to not negotiate?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I like that. I'll tell you, there was a situation recently that I dealt with somebody who did not want to negotiate, and I really felt like, and it was a woman, that she should have, and I encouraged her to, maybe we should go back and see if there's any more room to move. And her response was, Linda, you know what, money, and she's a more senior level person, and she said, I really want to start this relationship off on the right foot. I am perfectly satisfied with the offer that they've presented to me. A little bit of difference or a little bit of change in that compensation is not going to make a hill of beans of difference to me on how I live or how happy I am. So it's, to me, I don't want to negotiate, which I thought was really kind of insightful and interesting and honest.
Yeah, I agree with that positive start attitude. I think if you're happy with the offer, you don't always have to negotiate. I think it starts things on the right foot. On the flip side of that, if you over-negotiate, that can sometimes put a target on your back.
Yes.
HR will look at you going down the hallway and say, that's the person that wanted blah, blah, blah. So it's not terrible not to negotiate. I think it's a good way to start your relationship with your new employer.
Yeah. And I will say, if you over-negotiate, that there's a good chance a client will walk away from you, and that's never, unless you didn't care. So it's not it's never good to do that. But the other thing that I was also thinking about this whole idea of negotiating is whether or not it makes sense for you to always negotiate, and I just don't think that's true. Oftentimes, too, when you're working with a recruiting firm, we will let you know based on the history we've had with the client, or sometimes the client's very clear. We went to the top of the range. There is no room to move on this, and I think it's really important for candidates to pay attention to that, too, that oftentimes there is no ability to move on a compensation plan.
Oh, great. Yeah, that was a wonderfully comprehensive answer. Thank you. The next question is on salaries and the differences you see regionally, and if you're seeing a trend of that evening out that might be related to more people being able to work remotely.
I have not seen an upsurge in people being able to work remotely. And we get at that a lot of the candidates that we work with really want to stay in a specific geographic area for family reasons and other reasons, which makes a lot of sense to me. But unfortunately, in data science and in analytics, and especially at the leadership level, collaborating in person and developing relationships and really smoothing the process in bringing these models into production, you can't do that remotely. And as a result, I just have not seen any growth in that. Now, moving to the West Coast, or the East Coast for people that are living in the middle of the country or lower cost of living areas is daunting, and because the salaries will never, ever make up for the increase in the cost of housing, and in some cases taxes too. So it's a personal decision that people make. They just live in a smaller smaller house, or they bunk up with 4 other people or whatever. So and that's more of a personal choice. So. Sandy, any other comments to add there?
Actually, I've seen folks on the West Coast, some of them, they were very attracted to going out there in the beginning, but then soon saw that they couldn't have the lifestyle that they wanted. So there's been a surge of people to get back home or get near parents, or if they've had kids, they need that community to support them. So I've seen more of that type of search.
Yes,
recently.
We are definitely hearing that more recently. The other, one other trend that we're seeing is, companies in California are developing, second headquarters, as we all know. But many of the ones that don't hit the headlines are opening offices in other locations: Denver, Dallas, Austin, Atlanta, Chicago, just because they are not able to effectively recruit in the Bay Area any longer. So, and also the cost of adding headcount there is tremendous. So that's another very, very interesting development.
All right, thank you. The next, we're going to have time for just a couple more questions here. There's been tons of great ones. The next one, we're going to look at the other side from the hiring perspective. Do you have any advice for companies looking to hire women in analytics?
Well, I think it's really important to network. And that's what Sandy and I do. I mean, we spend our days networking with quantitative people, right? And we've been doing it for, in my case, decades, and Sandy going on decades. And so it's hard to, it's not easy to find women, and especially if you're looking for senior level women in analytics. So I don't have an easy answer. You just have to be able to, promote those relationships over time, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy. So you could always come to Burtch Works.
I would also try to figure out what the reputation of your culture is, whether you're open to women or how women have succeeded in the past. I think sometimes reputation precedes you in an organization typically run by men. So, and that gets out there, word gets out there. So I think that's an important factor is learn a little bit about what your reputation is for women in the analytics space and in senior positions.
Yeah, and you really have to make sure that you promote. I mean, hopefully you have a positive reputation and you could promote that to women. So, yeah, it's tough though.
Yeah, okay, great. And our final question, since we've been talking a lot about our salary report, how would you say the new salary history laws and regulations are going to affect those reports?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. We certainly have our eyes peeled on any kind of problems that are coming up. We're sort of anticipating that there's going to be more issues with the size of our sample. However, I have a sort of a contrary viewpoint on all of this, and I'm just going to throw it out there. People are probably going to start throwing apples at me or something. But I really think that what would solve the issue is if everybody was transparent about their compensation. If it wasn't this deep, dark secret that nobody talks about. I mean, people talk to me about their compensation all the time, right? And they tell me oftentimes, you're the only person who knows my salary besides my spouse, and there's something wrong with that. It shouldn't be this deep, dark secret. And if it weren't and everybody knew what everybody in their organization made, there would never be any problems with that, or if there were problems, they'd get fixed right away. So that's my sort of contrarian viewpoint on it. I've never seen anybody else say that either. So, but anyway, that's how I feel about it. Write me. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of write-ins on that.
Here come the apples. Well, do you think that people, it's more of a secret, and that's why it's not transparent?
Yes,
there's some funny business going on there.
Well, you know what? I think, with our corporations, or at least the people that we've worked with, I've never felt there was funny business going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this, and I don't doubt that there is funny business going on out there in a lot of organizations. I just don't see it in the analytics community because, most people are really on the, most corporations, most organizations, most human resources people, they're all on the up and up. And there's, we don't need to be overly concerned, I think, about that, and our numbers also reflect that. So, but could it? I just think there's this whole ages-long taboo on talking about compensation, and until that goes away, I think we're always going to have problems.
Good point.
Well, I will say, Linda, at least one person in the chat says that they agree about salary transparency. So,
oh, great!
Not everybody's out to get you now. Well, that is all the questions we're going to have time for today, but we really appreciate everybody who submitted questions and for coming to our presentation. If you want to connect further with us, please reach out to info@burtchworks.com. We would really love to hear from you. And thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.